The Citizen Report is a production of New Shannon Media. All content protected under copyright.
And welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm Jonathon Shannon, and thank you for joining me tonight. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American. David Heller's off tonight, but joining me is a good friend of mine, Jonathon Baer. If you follow me on Facebook, you might see him comment on my posts from time to time. And Jonathon, it's great to have you on the show for the very first time. Why don't you take a few moments to introduce yourself?
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm really excited about that. And again, my name is Jonathon Baer, and I'm a former history teacher, and I've studied the Constitution. I've studied the founding documents, and like the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers and such. I'm also a certified paralegal, and I've run for town council twice.
Okay. All right. And of course, that town is Indian Trail, North Carolina. And I'll just mention right off the top, you have a YouTube channel that you people can go watch about to see all the corruption in that town. Just take a second to talk about that before we get going here.
Yes, it's called Truth You Can Handle. You might have to type in Indian Trail because when you type it in, otherwise you get a few good men. So you'll have to search for that. But otherwise, I've been active in our town for going on, well, close to 10 years now. Just a real brief introduction as to what I was doing. Initially, when I became active in the town, it was because I was just discovering the constitutionality of the sheriff's office. And that was primarily through Richard Mack, who won a lawsuit against the federal government regarding the Brady Act, and people need to look into that. And so anyway, our town was negotiating with the sheriff's office for a new contract, and I thought it would be a great time to, do a teaching opportunity and actually get a better contract where the sheriff's office would actually be more closely bound to their oath of office and protecting our rights. And so from there, then there were a lot of things that went on behind the scenes that suddenly ballooned and exploded and became something other than what I intended to be. And then from that point on, I became a government accountability type person, and then I began recording my exchanges with the government, because I learned that I couldn't trust them anymore to tell the truth. So that's where I got involved.
Okay, so obviously, as the audience hopefully has gotten the idea by now, you have a pretty good sense of the government's power, the power it's supposed to have, and also what it can look like when it goes into full tyranny. In keeping with that, now you and actually your son, and that's how I know you, your son, Ben, is a good friend of mine from college, and we went down to a restaurant over in the line over the state border into South Carolina, and in that restaurant was purporting to have this sign that said, basically, in essence, that they have this ordinance from the city or the town of Fort Mill, and that there's a mask requirement. Well, the only issue with that is if people have watched my previous podcast, they already know this, but the city of Fort Mill or town of Fort Mill is not there. It's not in the city limits. It's not even. You can't even mistake it. It's well outside the town limits, and it was just pure craziness. They wanted us to hold up our shirts, and I just kind of wanted you to, because you were the one talking to the what do you call it? The person up front, I guess.
The hostess.
Yeah.
The greeter. Mhm.
Yeah. Talk to the audience about that, because that was a real bizarre situation, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, first I want to let everyone know that if they have a Famous Dave's near them and they're not really strict on wearing a mask, whatever, go and eat their food because it's a great barbecue place. My favorite place is up in St. Paul, and I mentioned to you, it's got a great jazz environment. So it's not that I don't like the company, that their product is great. However, and nothing against the hostess either. I know that she was just following orders, but um, yeah, I didn't have any intention on going in there with to spar with anybody. I didn't want this to be a political activity. However, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "Well, you have to wear a mask." Well, that right away got under my skin, and I'm like, "Well, no, really don't have to." And she's like, "Well, yeah, you do." I said, "Look, well, there's a table right over there. We could just walk right over there and sit down." And she was, very persistent. She's just like, "Well, no, I mean, you need a mask." And I'm like, "Well, the virus isn't that intelligent to know that I'm going to walk those 5 feet and it's going to attack me. And as soon as I sit down, it's going to leave me alone, And I said, "Well, let's do this. Give me, let me order a drink, because as long as I have a drink, right?"
Mm-hmm. You're eating technically.
Yeah.
And give me a glass of water.
A glass of water with a straw, or just so I can have something in my mouth the whole time.
Yeah.
And the virus will go away. It won't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
And so she was like, "Well, if you don't want to wear a mask, you can, like you said, you pull your shirt over your face."
Do this.
And I'm like, really? Really? If that's all it takes, then why do we need the CDC?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we need those recommendations? So and the back and forth went a little while, but I was incredulous at it, but I wasn't going to make a big stink about it. We could go somewhere else to eat, and I'm not going to force a business to take my money.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not mad. I mean, I'd say I was a little irritated because of the stupidity. I mean, I'm like, and another thing too, I didn't tell you, I worked in healthcare for more than 10 years.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I know about PPEs. I know about how to take care of myself in a health situation. I've dealt with a lot of nasty stuff, and so that's not going to bother me any. And well, anyway, needless to say, no harm, no foul. But still, I missed out on some good food, and so did you.
Oh yeah. I could tell it was food I was really gonna like. But we made the best of it. We went across the street and had a good time, didn't we?
Oh yeah, it was still a good time. We still had good food, and both, like you said, I think the other day, or you said online that both of them are Midwest franchises, so it's it's good Midwestern food.
Yeah, that's true. And don't you just find it interesting though that, like you said, I just want to kind of draw the audience attention to this one point you mentioned about how the virus won't go the virus won't be at the table, but you can be walking and supposedly you can get the virus in that 5 feet or however many feet. And this thought popped into my head as you were talking. We could have just walked in there and just claimed to be protesters.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could have, but again, like I said, I didn't want to make a big stink about it. It's not
true.
As much as like their food, it's not that important.
Yeah, but you've told me you're a paralegal. You're certified to be one, and you're pretty knowledgeable about the Constitution, as you said, about all the law and legal stuff. Just take a few moments to explain to viewers your what's the word I'm looking for? The how you see it, if you will, about these masks, because I mean, I don't think we've ever seen in our lifetimes as much tyranny in this country as we have, of course, mask is just one part of it. It's not just masks. It's keeping businesses closed. It's telling people that they, they can't engage in being with their, it's like you can't, it's like some people, like some jurisdictions, like I believe down in Broward County, Broward County, Florida, they even want you to wear masks inside your home. And whatever. It's just insane. So tell people a little bit in general about all this tyranny taking place and what you think about all of it.
Well, first I have to tell you a little bit about my worldview, and it's not just mine, but as a Christian, I believe that we fall under a higher authority, and we have a right to our conscience. God made us all with a conscience, and these kinds of things, it's not about it's about a moral law. And in essence, all laws are someone's morals. It's just whose morals are you going to enforce? But ultimately, our founders acknowledged, in fact, if you'll excuse me getting up here.
It's all right. It's all right.
I'm going to show you 3 books. You might not be able to see it very well. This one is The Lives of the Signers of the Declaration of Independence. So
the lives of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Okay.
Correct. This one right here is America's God and Country.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, you have camera's right there. So you have
there you go.
Yeah, you have
original
the original intent of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
These are taken directly from their writings, from the whole argument that they were setting up the Constitution to begin with. Because remember, we had a country before the United States.
Right.
It just wasn't as unified.
Right.
And we didn't have a strong central government.
So are you referring to the Articles of Confederation, the government organized under that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, and there's a lot of work out there, and I'm far from being an expert. I mean, there are a lot of smart people out there, way smarter than I am, that could explain it better than I can. So in my simplest way of explaining it, the founders believed that we all had to have an account to a higher authority.
Mm-hmm.
They set up the best government we could on Earth. I can't remember, my memory isn't all that great who said what, but they said government is not our friend. It is like a fire, and it can either be a useful tool or it can be our enemy. It can be like a raging fire that just consumes everything.
Right.
And so the highest form of government is the accountability of our conscience and our will to God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, governments are instituted by God. So we have to have these understandings. It's not just about the Bible. The very people who founded the Constitution and our form of government, in my opinion, were the most brilliant men that we've ever seen in modern times. And I consider that modern times.
Yeah.
And when you read their writings, if you can get even beyond their eloquence and get to the heart of what they're saying, they are emphatic about the fact that it's God first. In fact, when they won their independence, one of the things that they said was, "There is no king but Jesus."
Mm-hmm.
you know. And in fact, George Washington, when offered to be king, he said, no, we just fought that. Why would we want that?
Right.
All right. So, and I also have some other books that I could tell you about that are facsimiles of original documents. So, because we don't have them, but they're facsimiles,
Right.
and they explain even deeper about our Christian heritage. So now, so we get then to modern times, and not to be too broad about this, but what we really see going on here, I hear people talking about how there is going to be, or there is a coup going on, or a revolt of whatever kind. But the truth is, the people of our republic, or the people who are enemies of this republic, have already had control of this country for a very long time.
Right. Right.
What we are seeing are their tactics being used in a last-ditch effort to make sure that we are cowed into a position where we have no choice but to do what they say or die. It's going to be that's how it is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing here is they are weaponizing businesses, and they are getting all of us to be enemies of each other, because once we start fighting each other amongst ourselves,
Right.
then they can go ahead and do what they want to do, and then come in and clean up the mess afterward.
Right.
So now we get then to jurisdictions. We get to the codification of the moral laws that I referenced.
Mm-hmm.
This is why the U.S. Constitution and each state constitution has their version of the Bill of Rights. And what's interesting about the Bill of Rights, and they hate this a lot, what's interesting about the Bill of Rights is that you can thank the Southerners for that. That was their handiwork.
Right.
Because they said, well, we're not going to consign ourselves over to this form of government because we understand how governments can be tyrannical.
Right.
So the first thing that we do, if we agree to having this Constitution, we have to have these bills, this Bill of Rights, incorporated immediately.
Right.
And that's what the Anti-Federalists were arguing the whole time. So we owe the South a debt of gratitude for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the Federalists said, well, we already that's just assumed in the form of government that we have. So, and you know what happens when we assume things, all right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so where we are now is we have whether a governor or a county commission or a council, a mayor, or whatever the jurisdiction is. We have people who are now exceeding their authority as constituted by the Constitution or their charters or what have you. And like I said, now we have businesses who have become arms of the government because the policies that they're enforcing, they didn't have these policies before.
Right.
You know? So one day you can walk in and sit down and have a burger, no problem. The next day you walk in, they say, sorry, you can't be served unless you have a mask.
Right.
Well, what happened? Well, we have a policy now.
Yeah.
Well, why do you have this policy? Well, we have it because the government told us to have it. And the government told us that if we don't have this, then we will be heavily fined, and they can also close down our business.
Right. So, these governors that are exceeding their authority, if you're, I guess the next thing I should ask is, if you're if someone's watching who might be a business owner who has a physical location and they have customers walk into the building and they're told by the government they're supposed to require masks, keep people 6 feet apart, and do all this other stuff, make their employees wear masks no less. What would you say to that business person as what would be their defense against it? Of course, of course, the Constitution, is at its core the legal defense. But what would you say practically? Because we have a government that just does not care one way or another what the Constitution has to say anymore in many places. But what would you tell a business in that kind of situation?
Well, the first thing that I have to tell you is that I am not an attorney.
Right.
And I cannot give legal advice. So the first thing I would have to tell them is make sure you have a very good attorney.
Yeah.
Someone who knows their constitutional law. And I was watching one of my favorite people, Chris Ann Hall, and she said even today, it is a very narrow field, and there are few that actually practice constitutional law because there's no money in it.
Yeah.
So my first bit of advice is make sure you have a very good attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can give you my opinion as to what these things are. And a business owner, he or she is going to have to make up their own mind where they're going to draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also suggest to and this isn't just for business owners, that they join credible organizations that can give them that backup, that moral support, if not the support that they need legally to say, look, I don't have a lot of money, so I can join these organizations that can help me do the fundraising or what have you. But their business rights, their property rights have been violated.
Right.
In my opinion. Because now they're being told, no different than the Nazis, fascism.
Mm-hmm.
You have your own business, but now we're going to tell you how you run your business.
Right.
And if you don't do it the way we tell you to do it, then guess what? You're not going to have a business anymore.
Yeah.
And it's very disturbing. So, like I said, I can't give legal advice. All I can say is, in my opinion, they're in a very precarious position.
Right.
In my opinion, they have the legal right to tell the government, well, you know what? We're going to handle it our own way. We'll put a sign on the front door that says, we understand these are trying times. We understand that there is a potential crisis going on. And there are businesses out there that have done this. So, and I'm sure you've seen those signs where...
I have.
Yeah, where they say, look, we're going to assume that if you don't have a mask on,
mm-hmm.
that you are within your rights to do so, that you have a reason for doing so, and we cannot assume anything about you other than that, and we can't ask you what your issue is because that's against the law. So whether you wear a mask or you don't, we are going to serve you. And so I would actually say something else, not to the business owners, but to potential patrons and customers.
Yeah.
I would say you talk to the manager. Even if he has a sign on there that says you need a mask, talk to the manager. And maybe this is where we kind of fell short. And ask them, would you serve us if someone had not told you that you needed this policy and this sign on the door?
Right.
And then you say, well, then what's the difference? Now, any business that you go to and they say we will serve anybody, and we will sell you anything or whatever their business is,
mm-hmm.
regardless if you wear a mask or not, then I say spread the word to everybody to go to only those businesses, and let them feel it in the pocketbook. Because right now, the economy is so tight. There's so many people out of work. People are pinching their pennies. And if all you have is a service sector and no one's going to the services, you're not going to stay open for very long. So you're going to have to understand who your customers are and what they're willing to spend their money on, because right now most people don't even have that money. And if they are going to go outside their front doors and they are going to spend some money, you want them coming to your business. You know, so as far as businesses are concerned, like I said, get a really, really good attorney who knows their stuff. And then to the citizens, you patronize only those businesses that understand. It's not even just about rights. It's about morality. And as a Christian, and this is where it comes back to your conscience, as a Christian, it is morally wrong to force your will onto someone else. Mm-hmm. It's wrong for me to do it to you, and it's wrong for you to do it to me. So I am not going to play that game. Yeah. And so anyway, like I said, I can't give legal advice, but I can give that kind of advice.
Sure. And of course, you're just giving your personal opinion anyway. And by the way, just as a side note, I'm sure Nikki wouldn't mind me bringing this up, but the longtime viewers of the Citizen Report would remember some months ago I brought on Nikki from South Carolina to talk about a different topic, and she's told me repeatedly recently that when she goes into a store, she comes prepared with a copy of the ordinance, so she can literally show the employee that by this exemption, I don't have to wear a mask. Of course, constitutionally, you don't anyway, but playing their game to the, because, again, it's difference between actual law versus color of law and then versus practicality. Right. She can show them the people that with low, not to insult everybody in the service industry. I don't mean to say that, but there are some pretty low IQ people in certain instances that just see what they think is a law and don't even, they can't even conceptualize the difference between a legal, something that's actually a law and something that's color of law. So playing their game, she can show them certain exemptions and say, by a medical reason or etc., I don't have to wear a mask. So I would encourage viewers to do the same. I may have to do it as well going forward, but let's broaden this topic out a little bit, because I wanted to ask you about what you thought about when it comes to, well, first of all, let's do this. In course, in recent months, we had the stay-at-home orders and things like that, and there was quite literally a restriction on non-essential travel. You were ordered to stay at home. And I just wonder, because roads are supposed to, they say public roads, which is supposed to be owned by the people, we the people. And I just wonder, maybe you can elaborate on this. What is it? Why did some of these governors act like they had the authority to seize upon something that's owned by we the people? And of course, you can interpret that in a lot of different ways, but if you're approaching this subject and you're looking at a governor that's just purely tyrannical, how can you even begin to reconcile and rationalize this? Because I certainly can't.
Well, again, I have to point out that this is a spiritual battle. When something doesn't make sense like that, then you have to go to the default of it's spiritual. Yeah. And if you want to see what the source of all this confusion is and why these people believe and do get away with what they are doing,
right?
It's because we aren't the moral people that we're supposed to be. And you can trace that to wherever you want to go. But the extension of that then is that if we were a moral people, we would not even allow these people to get into positions like this to begin with.
Right.
And then trying to have to extricate them from something that they shouldn't have been in to begin with, it's even harder to do. So I couldn't necessarily tell you specifics because there are so many different aspects to go.
Sure.
You know, if we had proper education on how our government is supposed to work and then actually practice that, then we would have all of the checks and balances in the system itself. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately that the final check on that would be the people, because that's where all the power is supposed to be.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I gravitated to doing what I was doing at the local level, because interestingly enough, in principle and in theory, that's where you have the most control.
Right.
You know, we're all worried about Washington, D.C., but, you know, that's hundreds of miles away. We can't do anything about that.
Right.
You know, but we can go to our local town council or our local commission, county commission, you know. Mm-hmm. We can have a relationship with our sheriff, you know, but most importantly, with our community, with our neighbors, you know. And I'm guilty of it too. I don't make the best of friends with my neighbors than I should, you know. And like I said, I'm guilty because we all love to be in our little comfort zone. We want to be kind of left alone, especially as things are going the way that they are, you know. Yeah. But if we had stronger neighborhoods, if we had stronger towns and cities, you know, if we had the relationship with our sheriff and in some cases the police departments, and we had a good relationship with our churches, you know, even as you have different denominations, you all kind of, not in an ecumenical way, but just you all kind of agree on what's really important, you know, in a civil society, and you agree, okay, we're gonna hold our politicians, and guess what? We're gonna get our politicians from amongst ourselves. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
You get people who you know. You say, okay, now look, you know, Joe Blow, you know, we know who you are. We know where you live. You know, all of our kids go to the same school. Now, if you don't do what's right, guess what? We're going to take you out and we're going to put someone else in who's going to do what's right.
Right.
And if you refuse to do it, guess what? We have a sheriff down here. He knows how to take care of business too.
Yeah.
You know? And the same thing goes for the different levels of government. So ultimately, the accountability begins with us and it ends with us.
Exactly. And I think that speaking of accountability, you know, we see about these masks. They're trying to push. I don't think a year ago any of us could have possibly have imagined this level of tyranny we're seeing right now. And I would tell people, you know, that just say it's just a mask. I would say it's not going to stop with just a mask. It's going to be, well, look at what Dr. Or Nazi Hair, whatever you call that. Fauci, or I like to call him Falsey. He basically has now come out and said that you should wear a goggles in addition to the face mask, and you should wear, I think he also mentioned face shields. So we're already seeing this building up to something more than just face masks. And I think down the road, we're going to see vaccines, and basically the vaccines, if we don't get a handle on this and let the government know we're not going to tolerate it, they're going to push it to the point where if you don't have a vaccine, if you don't show your papers, you can't go into a business, just like you can't with the mask in many cases now. And I wanted to ask you about how you think that the people can go about putting a stop to this, because we can't keep letting this go down. We can't keep going down this path.
I think the question is more important. Do the people want to put a stop to this?
Yeah.
The question is, do they prefer security and safety over freedom?
Yeah.
And if they think that Uncle Sam is going to be their daddy and take care of them from cradle to grave, well, then you're not going to see that change. And really, what you're going to have to see happen, it comes right back down to people's hearts, their souls. There's what's deep down inside of them, the core of them, and what's ultimately going to have to happen, and not in some dreamy fantasy way that a lot of churches want to promote, but a real revival done by God, done in the individual, and then manifested in a body of people. And again, it's going to have to start at the local level, because that's the only way it works. But the thing is, we can't create it from the ground up. And ultimately, what has to happen, it doesn't have to be physically, but mentally, just your whole being bowing down to God and just saying, God, help us.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we can do. Really have, because you're going to have that, either you want the government to completely take care of you, or you want to be able to take care of yourself and your family.
Right. And I think there's a lot of people who are awake, and I'm not saying now whether it's enough people, I think it's anybody's guess right now. I personally think there's a lot more people awake than most of us realize, and you can call it silent majority or whatever. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because we see the polls and we see that Biden is ahead. And if you go out, I was like today, I was out driving around just on certain roads today, and I saw a lot of pro-Trump stuff. And of course, I'm not just saying that to just mean Trump as a person. I mean, behind that is a whole ideology of pro-America, pro-liberty, and liberty over security at its core, and also this reality of knowing we're one nation under God, because we have to acknowledge that we really are. We have to acknowledge God, otherwise, the country is done for. But here's the thing: this election is so unprecedented. I mean, it's like Q said, this is not another 4-year election, and I truly believe that. We see what the Democrats are trying to do. They're trying to steal the election, and they're trying to already say, look, if I get into power, meaning Biden, he'll defund the police. It'll just be pure chaos. It's just, I cannot believe how polar opposite it is. And I just think it's like you said, it goes back to what you said earlier about something else. It really is spiritual, because these people that want to destroy America, I think that they know they have to destroy America because they want their new world order, but they have to get rid of us first, because we're all about freedom. And guess what? We go around the world promoting that. We promote it. Now, I'm not saying, look, the deep state had us go into certain wars, and they did things they shouldn't have done. But at the end of the day, we still promote liberty. I mean, for instance, Hong Kong, the people there want liberty. And guess what flag they fly? They fly the American flag. So to them, that's a symbol of liberty. And I find it interesting that you see that happening in Hong Kong, and yet here you've got people that are just so brainwashed. They think that this country is so terrible. And I guess the next thing I'd ask you to do is just take a moment to talk to anybody that thinks this country is so bad, and maybe try to appeal to them. What would you say to them if you were given a couple of minutes to just tell them why this country is not the evil country that they've been brainwashed into thinking?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer that because I think it would have to be on an individual basis.
Maybe just in general, or
yeah, well, and the reason why I say that though is because I was very fortunate to grow up in a time where even we were taught to believe in your traditional patriotic God family, it was in the schools, and we were taught the patriotic songs. We were on a basic level. We were taught about, just the goodness of America.
Yeah.
And the thing about all of this is, yes, we can't be Pollyannish about all of this. We can't be, if I can put it this way, patronizing patriots. We can't be the kind that put out the platitudes and all that kind of stuff because it makes us feel good. It's not about feeling good. But there has been a transition where the kind of people that you're talking about, I don't think, now don't get me wrong, God can reach anybody, okay? And I'm not the best orator, I'm not the best person at a debate, so I'm not going to be able to go to somebody and convince them on how they need to be or how they should believe about something. I'm one of those people, I'm a very empathetic person, and I'm capable of seeing other people's points of view. Doesn't mean I agree with them all, but I have the ability to see that and to understand it. So, yes, I want them to believe in what's good about America, and there's nothing wrong with promoting that, because it is, nothing, I know it sounds funny, nothing good can be bad,
Right.
And so, yes, we have to go, and I've mentioned this before in other ways, but I know on my part, I have to do so much better at showing empathy, compassion, and I think that if I were able to do that better as an individual, I think that could win people over a lot more than me convincing them to believe something. Because they're going to see it in my character, they're going to see it in my face. But there are going to be some people who just can't be reached.
Right. And I think a lot of these people that are convinced into thinking America is the great Satan of the West, if you will. I hate to say this because my dad used to be a school teacher. Correct me if I'm wrong. You used to be a teacher, right?
Yeah, I had student teaching experience, so I didn't get into a school because when I moved down here, they won't reciprocate my license. So
I see. Right. But I hate to say this, but I truly believe a lot of this can be traced back to the school system, the education, the K-12. And these people come out of high school or college, and they think the wackiest things about America. They think that we need to bring in Sharia law. We need to have all kinds of stuff that are just completely un-American. And I think that one thing that I think can and should be changed is there should be more accountability with, first of all, the curriculum. The curriculum should be pro-America, and because what we see is that so many times we have anti-America, we have all kinds of stuff put into textbooks, and it's no wonder kids come out thinking a certain way. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about that at all, but I think a lot of this actually can be traced back to that, because if you think about it, kids that they get inducted into a school system, and when they leave that school system, they've gone in thinking one way, or at least wasn't hostile towards America. So often, though, when they come out, they're leftists, they're Antifa, and they think the craziest things. And then of course they accept this tyranny and they welcome it, they celebrate it. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about that at all, but I thought that might be something good to mention.
I'll try to be as succinct as I can, because there are a lot of angles. Originally, our education system run by the churches, and I can't remember if it was Marx or not, but they said, well, we have to go after the children. That's where we get our start.
Yeah.
You can't go after the parents, excuse me. So the problem is not about the people who are teaching, that there are good and bad, like,
sure,
like everything
absolutely
else. And for a while, God and the Bible were tolerated in the schools for a while. But ultimately, the system was designed to take education out of the hands of Christians and put them into people who did not follow after God and after everything that He stands for. You know, the Bible says that God is love, you know, and only God is good. So anyone who follows after that, if you are an enemy of God, the best way to do that, you know. And so we have to look at a whole different way of teaching kids. We have the technology now. You don't have to be in a school. It's helpful, don't get me wrong. I liked being in school too. But we have to get rid of the nationalization of schools. It's got to come right back down to your local area.
Yeah.
You know, and not everyone has a small, you know, town that you live in. Some of them are in, you know, rural areas. You got to, you know, go a little bit further out. And you can't make it compulsory. You can't. You got to get rid of the truancy laws and stuff like that, because you're punishing the parents, not the kids, you know. And so there's so many things. You have most of the education, the curriculum that we have is designed and ordered by the United Nations. And you know, I've spoken with people who have direct knowledge to that kind of stuff. So so we have so many foreign influences in so many areas of our life: the banking, the education. I mean, even our Christian universities are no longer Christian. The ones that started, you know, like Harvard and you know, any other Ivy League, Princeton, they all started, you know, as Christian places, and look at them now.
Yeah, they are the epitome of leftist ideology in America, basically.
Yeah, so I mean, if it comes when you're talking about education, people, you know, want to make it personal and stuff, and no, you have to look at it, because, like I said, I wanted to go into that too, but I went in with a different heart, with a different idea, and I was going to work within the system. I probably wouldn't have won a lot of friends, but I would have worked within the system to show those kids, look, there are other ways, you know, and the things that you're being taught, I might only have them for a semester. I may never see them again. So I'm going to try to implant in them something and be some kind of a positive example to them, to say, you know what, like with me, I think of a couple teachers that I've had in, you know, whether it was in elementary or junior high, middle school kind of thing, that made just left huge imprints on me, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't doubt that there are people like that in the educational system now.
Right.
But they are a minority, and they're not going to be welcomed in this environment. So,
Right.
Educating people, especially when they're older, I don't too difficult because they're still young. They can still be taught, but the bottom line is, again, it's spiritual, and it goes to where are people's hearts.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, we're going to run out of time pretty soon, but I think the last thing the last topic I thought I might bring up was why we have these masks and things like that. And by the way, I'll just say this for the record, and I've said this many times before. If it has nothing to do with health. It's all about control. And I won't take time to explain why in this episode, but I want to kind of go a level above that and maybe talk about the 16-year plan to destroy America. They had the deep state, the Luciferians up at the very top. They had a plan to destroy America, and it started with Obama. That was the first set of 8 years. The second set of 8 years was supposed to be Hillary. She was supposed to be the queen of America, if you will, and she was going to be the closer. She was going to be the one to destroy America. And because they were deprived of that, as someone else put it, Satan was denied his timing. Basically, they've had to ramp it all up. They've had to speed everything up, and they've had to try, and as a result, they're being exposed. The people can see now what they're really about, all the tyranny and how nothing seems to make sense. They say you can't do fireworks. Well, a bunch of people in Los Angeles said, I don't think so. I'm going to do it anyway. And you've got all these other examples I could go into, but you see them trying to destroy America because I think that something that people don't always seem to remember, particularly those that don't watch anything but just those that like watch Fox News, and they think they're getting all the truth there. I hate to break it to them, they're not. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes where Trump and the Patriots, they are doing certain things to take out the deep state and take out what now. Of course, it's one thing to take out people that have committed treason, but people aren't going to be so reactive of that. What's really going to be reactive is when you bring in crimes against humanity, when you talk about children, women, men, and boys, girls, all of them being abused. It's just absolutely insane. And we see all these signs of certain things happening. And we see that Ellen DeGeneres, how her show is on the verge of being canceled because of internal conflicts or whatever. I guarantee you there's a whole there's something there, and there's all kinds of examples elsewhere. But I didn't mean to go off on that, but I kind of wanted to just get your thoughts about all this because about the deep state trying to destroy America and how we have Trump and the Patriots. No, Trump's not perfect, but he's being used right now to accomplish a lot of good. So would you be interested to sharing your thoughts about that?
I can give you some educated guesses, nothing too deep or insightful because I'm not in that inner circle. But I would say that what your viewers need to understand is forget about the left-right paradigm. Forget about Republicans and Democrats. Forget about everything. If I can quote one wise Muppet, you must unlearn what you have learned. And so we are in a form of education right now, like you've mentioned. But it's people who want power are distracted by the D's and the R's and the lefts and the rights.
Right.
These are all distractions. Television is a weapon. It's a distraction. There's a science behind it. There's a psychology behind it. There's more to it than just what we want to do as far as entertainment, And I grew up on the television. I loved television. So, but I know what it is, and so these are just distractions. And as far as the plan, I look at it like this was a plan that was created before we were even around. I mean, before known time.
The plan. When you say plan, you mean plan to destroy America?
Well, this is ultimately a global thing.
Right.
And what is the ultimate goal? It is just
New
like it
World
was
Order.
in the Tower of Babel kind of thing.
Yeah.
We are going to ascend to the skies, and we are going to defy God, and we are going to overthrow him. That is the ultimate thing. And one of the tactics then is to get rid of anything that resembles him.
Yeah.
So even in symbology, America, like you said, is the last hope of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and again, I'm talking about symbology. So when we see what's happening, and I'm the first one to admit I'm it, and I try not to be, because I know, but this plan, I'm watching it just like you are. There's not a whole lot that we can do. And one of the things that I was reminded of is all I can do is watch and pray.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully,
right.
and I'm hopeful that God will do something here where we can have at least a little bit of a reprieve, and hopefully we can get these evil people out of there. But unfortunately, I only see it for a short while. But yes, we've got to get out of this lethargy. We've got to get out of this illusion, and we need to find a way to unite ourselves together, because we, once we see what's happening, once it's put out there, people are going to have to make a choice. It's going to be, do we believe that it's okay to do these crimes? Are we going to consign ourselves to evil, or are we going to consign ourselves to good? There's not going to be any middle ground.
Right.
So as far as the plan is concerned, as far as like the Q plan or whatever, I'm going to take it from the Bible, where and I can't quote it exactly, but basically there was and he was confronted, and I think it was the Sanhedrin, and they were trying to decide if Jesus was the real deal.
Right.
And he said, well, if this is from God, then we can't fight against it. And that's kind of the thing with this whole Q thing. You have detractors. I have a hard ground on it, but I do follow. I want to know what's going on, and only God knows the truth. Only He can discern between, what is right and wrong in this situation. So all I can say is, if they are for God, then I hope that they're successful. But if they are not for God, and this is just another big deception, then I don't want them to win, because if it's not from God, then it can't be good. So, I'm not trying to equivocate here. It's just that, not knowing the details, it's hard to really put your finger on it.
Right. And I would just say that I think that if you look at what Q's been saying, that, trying to get people to understand that there is good and evil, and that to me, when I look at Q, I see what I would want to see in terms of if someone's on the side of good. That to me, I'm like you. I'm always kind of keeping that thought in the back of my head as to whether it's all a psyop and things like that. But at this stage of things, I think that there's a lot of evidence to say that Q is legitimate, because we see a lot of proofs taking place. We see that Q's talking about the Great Awakening, showing people that there was this plan to destroy humanity, and that Trump and the Patriots are trying to work to expose it. Because really, when it gets right down to it, exposing evil is enough to destroy it, because it can't live it can't live. It can only thrive in darkness. If it's brought to the light, it'll be destroyed. Wouldn't you agree with that, perhaps?
Yeah, the darkness cannot comprehend the light.
Right.
And evil, by its very nature, is self-destructive. Jesus said that a nation divided against itself cannot stand.
Right.
So, like I said, I really hope that if their stated purposes are genuine, then I want them to succeed. Because if they're setting people that are captives free, then we gotta support that.
Right.
So I mean, but just everything remains to be seen. It's to debate or anything. All we can do is what's in our sphere of influence,
right?
And do what we can there. It doesn't mean that you can't ask the questions. It doesn't mean that you can't be curious. It doesn't mean that you can't do the kind of research or whatever. I don't think God holds that against us. However, we can't lose sight of what's really important.
Right. All right, fair point. All right, I tell you what, this hour went by really fast,
Yeah,
and I enjoyed having you on. Maybe I can have you on again sometime. That would be great.
Yeah, it would be great.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
Yeah, yes it has. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into the Citizen Report, and don't forget our website as well, thecitizenreport.weebly.com, and thank you, Jonathan, again for coming on. And I'll see everyone at home. I'll see you right back here again next time. Have a good night, everyone.